I had been working the night shift at a small convenience store for 6 months. Most nights were quiet, almost painfully dull. The town itself was barely a dot on the map, just a scattering of houses along the highway, a few businesses, and nothing else for miles. Our store was the last stop before empty fields and dark roads stretching into nothing. The store itself was a relic, linoleum floors worn down to bare patches, fluorescent lights that flickered incessantly, a faint chemical smell of stale cleaning solution mixed with coffee that had been sitting in the urn for hours. I usually came prepared for boredom, bringing books or podcasts to keep myself awake, and most nights I would spend the hours restocking shelves, checking expiration dates, and pretending to be busy while the hum of the neon sign above the door droned in the background. That night, though, something felt off. The moment I stepped inside, the air was heavier than usual, thick with tension, like the room was holding its breath. The lights flickered more violently than normal, and the shadows on the floor seemed unnaturally long, stretching across the aisles in distorted angles. Even the buzzing of the neon sign felt sharper, almost malicious. I shook my head, telling myself it was just fatigue. Around 2:07 a.m., the door chimed. I looked up, expecting a late-night traveler or a trucker stopping in for coffee. Instead, a man walked in wearing a dark hoodie. The hood shadowed his face completely, hiding any hint of his identity. He didn't say a word. He didn't acknowledge me. He simply wandered slowly down the aisles, hands stuffed into his pockets. Something about him made my stomach twist. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that people behaved oddly at night, but a cold prickle ran down my spine. I returned to the shelves, pretending to ignore him, but I kept glancing up. Then I noticed it. The security cameras. They weren't showing him. I swiveled my chair, staring at the monitors. Nothing. The aisles were empty. My pulse began to spike, and a sinking feeling settled in my chest. "Sir, can I help you find something?" I called, forcing my voice to sound steady. Silence. Only the faint echo of the door chime responded. I tried to laugh it off, but the laugh caught in my throat. The air felt colder now, pressing against my skin. Something in the shadows was waiting, watching. I tried to convince myself it was a prank or a glitch in the cameras. Slowly, I walked down the aisles, each step echoing against the tiles. The faintest shuffling sound came from the back of the store, soft and irregular. I froze, my heart hammering. I reached the end of the aisle. Nothing. Empty shelves. The sound stopped. I turned back toward the counter, but then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move across the floor near the snack shelves. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make my stomach lurch. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady my breathing. I stared at the monitors again. Still nothing. The cameras showed empty aisles. My mind raced. Was it a reflection? A trick of the light? No, this was different. The lights flickered violently, and a soft hum seemed to vibrate in my chest. I could hear the faint rustling of something moving behind me, though I knew the store was empty. My hand shook as I reached for the bat I kept behind the counter. A whisper floated through the aisles, almost inaudible. "Leave, now!" I froze. My head darted left and right, searching the empty store. The shadow in the corner seemed to pulse, stretching along the walls as if alive. I realized I was holding my breath, every nerve in my body screaming that something was very, very wrong. The next hour was absolute torment. Footsteps echoed softly across the linoleum, fading whenever I turned my head. I tried to call out, but my voice sounded tiny, fragile, swallowed by the emptiness. Every time I glanced at the monitors, the aisles were empty. Every shelf was pristine, yet I could hear the sounds of movement, whispers, and scratching. I walked toward the beverage fridge, trying to act normal. That's when I felt it. A hot, icy breath against the back of my neck. I spun around violently. Nothing. Empty aisles. My pulse was racing. Sweat ran down my back. I gripped the bat tightly. Shadows flickered across the shelves, stretching and twisting in impossible shapes. I felt a presence behind me. My mind tried to rationalize it. Wind from the broken AC, a reflection, exhaustion, but I knew it wasn't my imagination. Then came the whispers again, louder this time. "Leave, leave, leave!" A shadow moved across the far end of the store. I saw it distinctly now, a dark hooded figure, motionless, observing me. I could feel its gaze pressing into me like ice. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was trapped. The door felt miles away. I realized then that something was playing with me, toying with me. The store had changed, shifted into something alien and hostile. The lights flickered, the air grew colder, and the silence stretched between the noises like a predator waiting to strike. I could feel my hands trembling as I gripped the bat. I had to confront it. "Who's there?" I shouted, the sound echoing violently through the empty store. Suddenly, the figure appeared near the checkout counter, hood up, face completely hidden, standing still as if carved from darkness. I swung the bat instinctively, and it passed through him. My stomach dropped. This wasn't real. Or maybe it wasn't entirely. The door slammed open with a violent gust of cold air, scattering receipts and empty coffee cups across the floor. When I looked back at the figure, it was gone. My heart raced as I tried to process what had happened. I grabbed my phone again. No signal. The landline, dead. I was trapped with nothing but the shadows and the oppressive feeling of being watched. I sat behind the counter, trying to calm myself. The lights continued flickering, and I could feel eyes on me, just beyond perception. Every noise made me flinch. The creak of the ceiling fan, the hum of the neon sign, the faint scuff of a shoe across the floor that I couldn't see. I called the police again. When they arrived, there was nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. The cameras had recorded nothing beyond empty aisles and flickering lights. I never worked another night shift alone. Day staff would joke about night ghosts or store spirits, but I knew better. Something had been in that store that night, something beyond explanation. Even now, months later, when passing convenience stores at night, I hear the faint chime of doors opening and closing. Shadows flicker just beyond my vision. I avoid night shifts, avoid empty stores, and keep my head down. Some nights, lying in bed, I feel the cold presence again, like icy fingers brushing my back, and I know I'll see that figure again, waiting for the next night shift worker, patient, silent, and hungry for fear. It was well past 2 a.m, the kind of night where even the air felt heavier than usual. I was driving home from a hospital shift that had lasted nearly 15 hours. My body was exhausted, every muscle aching, every nerve frayed from the constant alarms, the incessant beeping of monitors, the soft cries of patients, and the long stretches of silence that followed each life lost. The roads outside were slick from a relentless drizzle, and the fog hovered low, clinging to the asphalt like it had a will of its own. Streetlights were dim, their glow stretched into halos that melted into the mist, making familiar streets look alien, unreal. I drove cautiously, one hand gripping the wheel, the other tapping nervously against my leg. My headlights barely penetrated the haze. Each turn of the wheel seemed to stretch time unnaturally. My mind, already exhausted, began playing tricks. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Trees swaying in the fog seemed like dark figures reaching out for me. And then I saw her. She stood at the roadside, drenched, her clothes plastered to her body. She wasn't waving, she wasn't signaling. She was just standing there, motionless. Her hair clung to her face, dripping water into the mud beneath her feet. She looked fragile, impossibly still, and yet there was an unnatural rigidity in her posture, as if she'd been molded into that position and had no choice but to remain. I hesitated. Normally, picking up a stranger at this hour would have been insane. Every instinct screamed to drive on, to pretend I hadn't seen her. But something compelled me to stop. Maybe it was guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe something darker I couldn't name. I pulled over slowly, the tires hissing on the wet road. I rolled down the window. "Do you need a ride?" I asked. She didn't answer. Without a word, she opened the passenger door and slid in. Silence enveloped the car immediately. The only sound was the faint click of the seatbelt. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on the windshield, staring straight ahead but seeing nothing. I swallowed hard and tried again. "Where are you going? Are you hurt?" Nothing. The fog outside thickened, curling around the car like smoke. My chest tightened, a cold wave of dread washing over me. Her silence wasn't peaceful, it was oppressive, like a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. I forced a laugh, trying to shake it off, but the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was horribly wrong. I tried again, softer this time. "Do you want me to pull over somewhere? Are you hurt?" Still nothing. The wipers scraped against the windshield in a hypnotic rhythm. The engine's hum felt distant, muffled, like the sound of the world had been muted. I glanced at the rearview mirror. For a brief instant, her reflection seemed off, not quite right. Her eyes looked darker, hollow, almost inhuman. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. My stomach twisted. The car felt smaller, tighter, the air heavy, almost suffocating. I could feel her presence in every corner of the vehicle. And then I noticed the smell. Wet earth, decay, a faint metallic tang. I gagged slightly, swallowing hard, trying to convince myself it was just the fog, the rain, my imagination. But deep down, I knew better. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but my eyes kept flicking to her reflection. I felt like I was being studied, measured, judged. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs. Goosebumps prickled my arms. The wipers made a steady mechanical rhythm, tick, 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 and with each pass, the silence felt heavier, like it was closing in around me. Then I thought I heard something faint, a whisper. Not from her, not from outside, but inside my own head. "You shouldn't have stopped." I swallowed hard, eyes glued to the road. The fog outside seemed to shift and move with every blink. Shadows danced along the edges of my vision. I felt like I had stepped into a world that wasn't real, and I couldn't get out. The fog became almost solid. Headlights barely illuminated a few feet of road ahead. Trees lining the roadside appeared like dark, twisted figures reaching toward me. Every mile stretched endlessly. Time seemed to distort, the seconds elongating unnaturally. Her presence in the car intensified. The cold deepened, and the smell, wet, metallic, faintly rotting, clung to everything. My hands shook on the wheel. My pulse was deafening in my ears. Every muscle in my body screamed to escape, but my mind felt trapped. Then I saw her reflection again, pale, hollow-eyed, lips moving in silent whispers. A cold brush ran along my shoulder. I spun around, empty. The fog outside seemed alive, curling around the car, shifting in ways that made no sense. I tried talking to her again, voice quivering. "Please, if you're hurt, tell me where to go." Nothing. Every instinct in me screamed, leave, run, drive faster. But the fog seemed infinite, stretching on like a void, swallowing the road and everything familiar. I was trapped with her. Panic took over. I swerved slightly on the slick asphalt. Tires squealed. The rearview mirror fogged despite the defroster. Faint handprints appeared on the glass, smearing slowly, dripping with condensation. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. The passenger seat was empty, but the seatbelt clicked. Cold air pressed against my skin. My breath came out in clouds. I slammed on the brakes, screeching tires, heart hammering. The fog outside rippled like liquid. I thought I saw her, at my house window. Pale, soaking wet, staring. My body froze. My mind screamed, run. But my legs wouldn't move. I blinked. She was gone. Silence swallowed the night, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next morning, I learned from neighbors that a woman had died on this same stretch of road years ago. Fog, rain, slick asphalt. Her car had gone off-road. Her body was never fully recovered. I never drive alone there anymore. On foggy nights, I swear I see her silhouette at the roadside, silent, waiting, watching. Even now, years later, the memory haunts me. The cold presence, the metallic smell, the oppressive silence, it never leaves. Some nights, lying in bed, I feel her eyes on me, and I know, if I ever stop, she will be there, patient, silent, hungry for fear. It was a bitterly cold November evening when I arrived at Hollow Creek. The road leading to the facility was slick with rain, fog clinging low, crawling across the asphalt like a living thing. Streetlights barely pierced the mist, creating pale halos that made every curve and tree appear surreal. The abandoned factory stood at the end of the winding road. Its brick walls were streaked with grime, and windows were either shattered or coated in a thick layer of dust. Rusted fences leaned at odd angles, and weeds had overtaken the once orderly parking lot. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and immediately noticed the silence. Not a bird, not a distant car, not even wind. Just heavy, oppressive quiet. Inside, the building smelled of damp metal and decay. My flashlight swept across rusted machinery, scattered crates and broken office furniture. Shadows clung to corners, twisting unnaturally. The further I moved, the colder it became, and I realized it wasn't just the night air. This place carried its own chill. Faint whispers seemed to echo through the hallways, almost imperceptible, just at the edge of hearing. I shook my head, telling myself it was the wind, but every instinct in me screamed that I wasn't alone. I moved deeper into the factory, each step echoing across the cavernous interior. The air was thick and still. The main hall, once alive with machines and workers, now felt like a tomb. Shadows stretched across the floors like long fingers reaching for me. As I explored, small disturbances began. A door that had been closed now stood ajar. Paper rustled on a desk where no breeze should have reached. My flashlight flickered, briefly plunging the hall into darkness. Each flicker revealed longer, darker shadows that seemed to stretch further than physically possible. I reached a narrow hallway, lined with cubicles long since abandoned. The floorboards creaked beneath my boots. Then I noticed movement in the corner of my eye, shadows shifting as if the building itself was alive. When I turned, nothing was there. Whispers became more distinct, though still unintelligible, curling through the air like smoke. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, exhaustion from the long drive, and tension from the reports I had read about the facility. But rational explanations couldn't suppress the growing fear clawing at my chest. The hall seemed to stretch endlessly. Every room I passed held signs of sudden abandonment, overturned chairs, scattered papers, broken equipment. It was as though time had stopped here, frozen in decay. The further I went, the more I realized the building was changing. The layout seemed to shift subtly. Hallways I thought I had mapped led to different rooms. Cold spots followed me, creeping along the floor and up my spine. Objects moved on their own. A chair slightly turned, a crate shifted from the corner, a faint trail of footprints in the dust that hadn't been there moments before. Whispers rose and fell like the tide, circling me from all directions. Sometimes it felt like they came from the walls, sometimes from the floorboards themselves. I could feel eyes on me, though no figure appeared. The shadows seemed sentient, pulsing and writhing as if alive. At the far end of the main hall, a large shadow detached itself from the wall. It hovered for a moment, indistinct, then disappeared behind a row of machinery. My pulse raced. Rationally, I knew it was a trick of light, but every instinct screamed otherwise. I tried to continue, but the building seemed endless. Every room, every corridor felt like a trap designed to keep me inside. The whispers grew louder, the cold deeper, and the shadows longer. I could hear them following, breathing, waiting. Panic set in. Doors slammed behind me with no wind. Lights exploded, sending sparks onto the concrete floor. The building seemed alive. Each step I took echoed back like a mocking laugh. Shadows stretched across the walls, forming shapes that vanished when I looked directly at them. I sprinted down a corridor, heart hammering, flashlight bobbing wildly. Something moved ahead of me, large, undefined, impossibly fast. I felt the air shift, cold fingers brushing my shoulder. My breath caught in my throat. I reached a stairwell, the stairs creaking under my weight, twisting as though the building itself was trying to stop me. The hallways seemed to close in. Machinery groaned as if awakening. Crates toppled over, dust falling like rain. I ran blindly, my footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. The shadows pulsed, moved, almost following me. Every sense screamed that I was not alone and that whatever was here didn't want me to leave. Eventually, I burst out of the building, gasping in the cold night air. The fog seemed thicker outside, curling around the broken windows like smoke. Hollow Creek sat in silence once more. I glanced back. The shadows inside the factory remained unmoving, but I knew they were watching. In the days that followed, I researched the facility. Hollow Creek had a history of unexplained disappearances and strange accidents. Workers reported hearing whispers and seeing shapes in the dark. And the night I spent inside, I now understood. The building hadn't just been abandoned. Something had remained, watching. waiting. Even now, weeks later, I sometimes see the factory from the highway, faint shapes behind broken windows. And I know Hollow Creek never truly lets go.